At some point after you run home, do you learn that Alonzo had been shot?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And
District Court is now in session. Honorable Judge Jason.
You may be seated. Yes. Court does call the cases of the people versus Daniel Franklin, two cases, 224F0559 and 24FB1156. Counsel, state your appearances.
Andrew Childers appearing on behalf of the people, Your Honor.
And also John Clemens on behalf of the people.
Good morning, Your Honor. Wendy Barnwell, P42505, on behalf of Mr. Daniel Franklin.
All right. Maybe the first thing that we should deal with is, I think it's 24FB1156. There was a need for an adjournment of that. We talked in conference regarding this.
That's correct, Your Honor. That would be the 24FB1156 case as it relates to the court in Chambers. Officer in charge, Detective Kevin Morrison, is unexpectedly in an emergency situation at the hospital right now. And as such is unavailable. In light of the fact that the people are able to proceed on 24F20559 today, we would respectfully request to adjourn the 24FB156 date in order to allow the officer in charge to be present for that hearing.
And Ms. Barnwell, I understand there's no objection to
None, Judge.
would the November 12th work for the parties in the afternoon?
One split second.
That's a Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm off that week.
Okay. Then what we'll do is we'll figure out another date.
Okay.
And we'll make sure to take care of that at some other point. All
I
right.
would just ask for purposes of the record, all subpoenas that have been served in that matter will be continued to that new date once we have it.
Yes, all subpoenas in that matter will be continued. All right. So we'll get a date momentarily. I'll ask Ann to get a date for you. All right. So on the other matter, are we ready to proceed?
Or we would move the sequestration of witnesses.
All right, all witnesses are hereby ordered sequestered. And so witnesses are ordered sequestered. They're not to discuss the matter prior to their testimony or after the testimony with anybody that hasn't testified, and are not to view this on YouTube or any other media. All right, our witnesses sequestered.
Yes, Your Honor, the only witness that is present in the court right now is the officer in charge.
All right, the officer in charge may remain in the courtroom. All right.
And this first witness, Your Honor, as we discussed in chambers, my understanding is that we'll be able
Yes,
video screen showing his face. So all that witness reports right now.
that one comes off. Let's go private now. You have to go normal, then lock, then exclude. Got it. Okay.
People would call Deontay McDaniel to the stand.
Raise your hand for me. You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God. Have a seat. State and spell your name for the record, please.
Can you spell it for me?
D-E-O-N-T.
Thank you. You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. McDaniel, I'm going to ask you a few questions. I just ask that you do your best to keep your voice loud. We are recording, and that way we can pick up what's being said. Okay? Is that a yes?
Sir.
Thank you. Mr. McDaniel, do you know someone by the name of Daniel Franklin? And what name do you know him by? Zeno. And is Mr. Franklin present in the courtroom here today? Can you tell me what he's wearing? Orange what? Your Honor, may the record reflect in court identification of the defendant?
Without objection, the record shall so reflect.
How long have you known the defendant, sir? A year? Okay. I'm going to direct your attention back to March the 26th of this year, 2024. Did you find yourself in a car with the defendant?
Yes, sir.
Yes? Okay. Where was that car? Michigan? Parked or moving? Parked? What kind of area was it parked in?
Parking lot.
Parking lot of what? Apartments? Okay. Off Michigan? And that's in Ypsilanti? Thank you. Who else was in this vehicle with you and the defendant?
Aaron. Wow.
Where were you seated in the vehicle? Middle? In the back? Okay. Who was to your right? To your right, or Zeno was to your right, so the defendant was seated next to you in the back seat to your right? Okay. Who was to your left? Tuan? Okay. Do you know him by the name of Quan Brown? Is that his real legal name, or do you just know him as Twan? Okay. Who was in the front passenger seat of the vehicle? Aaron? Is that Aaron Hayes? Okay. And what name do you know him by? Okay. Do you call him any other name? Okay. And who was in the driver's seat of the vehicle? Alonzo Jones Holly? Okay. And what name do you know him by, or what do you call him? Zoe? Okay. How long have you known Alonzo? Okay. So you grew up together? Okay. So all five of you are seated in this car and it's parked in the parking lot of some apartment complex off Michigan? Okay. What time of day? Evening, morning, noon? What time are we talking about? Nighttime? Okay. 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock? What time were we? Do you have an idea? Okay, it was late. Okay. And what are the five of you doing in this vehicle? Smoking? Okay. At some point, you overhear any sort of conversation between the defendant and Alonzo, who's seated in the driver's seat. Okay, what was that conversation about? A breeze pen? What is a breeze pen? What's that? Nicotine? Is that what you could call like a vape? Okay. What about a breeze pen are they talking about? Hold on one second, sir. Sorry.
I did.
I'm gonna hit it again.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, sir. I think the question I'd ask you, what are the defendant and Mr. Jones Holly talking about? What's going on? They're arguing back and forth? Okay. Are you participating in this argument, or are you minding your own business? What are you doing? Okay. Is this argument getting heated at all? Like, is there yelling? Okay. How long did this go on for? Okay. So at the end of this 2-3 minute, the argument is more heated? Okay. Do you hear Alonzo say anything to the defendant? What, if anything, does he say?
He said, give me my breeze.
Okay. Did you ever see Alonzo with a gun? Okay. Did you know him to carry a gun at that time? Okay. What is the defendant's after that said, what happens next? Okay. So nobody is saying anything for like a minute. Do you see Alonzo turn around or reach for anything like that?
Hold on. Okay. Need you to speak up a little bit. Okay.
It may help if you scoot just a little bit closer.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Hold on one moment.
Sorry, sir.
Might
Thank you.
not, because we've got that excluded. So I need you to really put your voice up, because either my mic or that mic over there has got to pick you up. That one in front of you is not picking you up because we've got your face excluded. Okay. All right. So just
Try your best to speak nice and loud, sir. Okay. Is that a yes?
Sir.
Thank you.
okay. You don't have to lean down to it that much.
Yeah.
You just sit back. I just need your voice. Got it? Okay. Go ahead.
There are various microphones, so we have to pick you up off other microphones, not the one in front of you, because we've excluded the camera on you. Okay. Thank you. My question was, did you see Alonzo reach for anything or turn and look back at the defendant or anything like that once in this quiet time after the argument got hot? Okay. Did you see Alonzo get out of the car?
No.
Okay. Did you see the defendant get out of the car?
No.
Is he reaching for anything or doing anything that you see?
No.
Okay. What happens next?
I heard gunfire. Everybody just scattered from the area that happened in.
Okay. Where did you hear the gunfire come from? Your right side. That's where the defendant was seated. Did you see a gun? Did you see the defendant with a gun? Okay. Did you see a flash or anything? Okay. But the gunfire came from your immediate right.
Yes, sir.
Did you see if anyone in the car had been hit at all by the gunfire?
No, sir.
Okay. You exit the car in which direction?
Left side.
Left side. So that's where Twan is.
Yes.
So you follow him out of the car?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you see where the defendant went? Did you see where Aaron, who was in the front passenger seat, went?
No.
Okay. Where did you run to? Okay. Did you at any point in time see if Alonzo got out of the car or moved or did anything? Okay. Could you see if anything had happened to Alonzo at all?
No, sir.
Okay. You just took off running? Okay. At some point after you run home, do you learn that Alonzo had been shot?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And based on learning that, this next day on March the 27th, what do you do at the Washtenaw County Sheriff's?
Sir.
Okay. And why did you do that?
Lonzo was my best friend. He'd do the same for me.
I'm sorry, what was the last thing you said?
Lonzo was my best friend. He'd do the same for me.
He would do the same for you? So you felt it important to tell the police about what happened in that car?
Yes, sir.
Okay. May I have one moment, Your Honor?
Yes. Just so that I'm clear, when you hear the gunshot, all 5 of you are still in the vehicle.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right.
One follow-up question, sir. At any point in time, did Alonzo tell the defendant to leave the car? Okay. But the kind of the last thing you remember him saying was that,
I'll object to leaving.
I'll overrule the objection. Go ahead.
I just want to just be clear. What is the last thing you heard Alonzo say prior to the gunfire?
Last thing I heard him say is, I'm gonna shoot you. You my breeze back. It was a heated situation at the time.
Okay. But you never saw Alonzo reach for anything, turn around, or do anything like that?
Thank you. All right.
No further questions.
All right. Cross-examination.
Good morning. Mr. McDaniel, your name is also Fatty? Was that a nickname? Okay. And the only person who talked about shooting somebody was Alonzo, correct? The only person who said those words.
Sorry.
Sorry. And you said you were rolling a blunt. You had been smoking? Okay. And you had gone in and bought the marijuana from a place. All right. And everybody had been smoking. There was no argument except for the argument that started over the breeze. Did you see like that? You were his friend, Alonzo's friend since the 5th grade? Okay. And you didn't see what was happening in the front with respect to what Alonzo was doing. You just heard gunfire. Thank you.
That it? Any redirect? Were you done?
Yes, sir.
Counsel? Any redirect?
I'll redirect now.
All right. Well, stay right where you are so we don't pick you up. So, okay, you can go ahead now. Okay, we can come back on. You may call your next witness.
Yeah, thank you. Are we all ready?
We're all set.
Yeah, thank you. We're going to call Deputy Sims next.
Please come forward and be sworn.
Trent Sims, TRENT.
May inquire.
All right, Deputy Sims, thank you. We have your name. What's your current employment? And I'm sorry, how long have you been so employed? And were you working in that capacity on March 26th of 2024?
I was.
What shift were you working?
Nice.
Okay, and what time does that start and end?
8 p.m. 8 a.m.
All right, during that, I want to turn your attention then to March 26th, 2024, working that midnight shift. Did you have an opportunity to go to the area of 960 West Michigan Avenue?
Yes,
Is that in the city of Ypsilanti?
it is.
Okay, and what took you to that location? Okay, and do you recall about what time that had happened? Okay, evening hours, obviously. Okay, and when you got to 960 West Michigan, did you have contact with a Chrysler 300?
Yes.
Do you remember what the license plate was? And I have your report if that might refresh your recollection. Okay, do you recall what type of car and what color it was? Okay. License plate then. All right. When you got to the location, you had that Chrysler 300. What did you find inside?
So it's back and the doors were open. I don't know if that was from originally assisting officers. There's mail in the driver's seat. There'd be deceased, like a show into that.
Okay. And did you have an opportunity to learn the identification of that decedent?
Yes.
And who is that? Okay. All right. Anything about the car? Did you notice any evidence of shots being fired or at the vehicle?
So we were on scene for a while. There was two holes to the windshield with glass like coming out towards us as you're looking at the vehicle, and then one towards the driver's
When you say the driver's window, you're talking about the one that would be on the left side?
Yeah, so if you're facing the rear of the vehicle, left side, if you're facing the front of the vehicle on the right side.
Right. Okay. All right. And what did that suggest to you? I know you might not be an evidence tech, but what did that suggest to you? And there were other deputies on scene at the time?
Correct.
Okay. Or in other law enforcement agencies as well?
Correct.
All right. Did you have an opportunity to go into the interior of the vehicle at all or look inside of the vehicle?
Yes.
Okay. Based on that information or that, you know, the idea that the bullets might have come from inside the vehicle outward, did anybody do a search of the vehicle?
I don't know if they did a full search of the vehicle, but they looked around the vehicle and I was alerted to some shell casings with the vehicle.
Okay. And what kind of, where were the shell casings that you were alerted to, if you know?
I don't remember specifically, but I remember that they were kind of spread out throughout the vehicle.
But they were inside of the vehicle? Okay. All right. And was your attention directed to those casings at all? Any of the casings that were inside of the, do you have an opportunity to examine them?
We'll glance at them real quick.
I just want to make sure here, the point that I'm making is that they were spent casings, not live.
Correct.
Okay. All right. And then are you familiar with a detective Swearing?
I'm sorry.
Are you familiar with a detective Swearing?
Yes.
And is he one of the evidence techs? Okay. Okay. All right. Was it pretty apparent that Mr. Jones-Holly was deceased at this? How would you characterize
Sustained.
Mr. Jones-Holly's condition at the time that you found him?
Not responsive. He appeared to be deceased.
Okay. I don't have any other questions for this witness at this point.
All right, cross-examination.
No.
All right, thank you. Sir, you may step down. Thank you. You call your next witness.
Deputy Swearing.
All right.
Aaron Sawyer, AARON,
You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Deputy Swearing, I'm glad that we have your name, but your current employment?
I'm a detective with the Washington,
Okay, and how long have you been a detective?
about 1 year and 10 months.
Any roles or responsibilities that you have in terms of evidence collection?
Yes.
And what, okay, go ahead.
I was gonna say I'm an evidence technician as well as on this particular case, I was called out on the scene for processing.
Okay, and I was just going to get to that. Did you have an opportunity to respond to a 960 West Michigan Avenue on or about either like the day of March 26th or the early morning hours of March 27th?
I did,
And again, that's in the city of Ypsilanti?
correct.
Okay, and why were you sent out to that location? Okay, and what was the scene as you approached on March 26th?
As I approached the west side of the parking lot of the Soft Trail Apartments, which is located at the address that's stated 960 West Michigan. On the west side of the parking lot, gray Chrysler back into the space, close to Michigan Avenue. That particular vehicle had multiple signs of impact from a projectile, as well as Mr. Alonzo Jones-Holly in the driver's seat.
Okay, when you say that there were some impacts,
Yes.
can you describe more thoroughly what you were talking about?
Yeah, there were what would colloquially be known as gunshots.
Okay.
In the windshield and the driver's side window.
Anything that you noted about those gunshots, about the direction of travel?
Yeah, so based on my training and experience, the gunshots were consistent with having initiated from inside the vehicle and traveled.
I don't
know that you would require expert testimony. If that's the basis of your objection, that's overruled. Go ahead.
Thank you. If you could continue, what made you think that they were coming from the interior of the vehicle?
Yeah, so through my training through evidence tech school as well as the academy, there was a larger surface area of glass missing on the exterior as well as peeling of the vinyl window on the driver's side, the front driver door, which is consistent in my training experience with a projectile moving through the glass, in this case, inward to outward.
Gotcha. All right. You make those observations. Are you able to do a processing of the interior of that car?
Yeah, so upon processing the vehicle, there were further signs to indicate the shots originated in there. There were 5 fire cartridge casings located in that vehicle.
Set 5.
Correct.
And do you recall the caliber of the casings?
They were,
And just to be clear, I want to make sure we have run into this problem that these were spent casings, not live bullets.
Correct.
Okay, and do you recall where they were located from within the car?
yes, there was one fired cartridge casing on the rear middle seat. There were two fired cartridge casings on the rear right seat, so the passenger side. There was one fired cartridge casing on the floor in front of that seat, and then there was another fired cartridge casing on the front passenger seat.
And to be clear, the Chrysler 300, that's a sedan type vehicle.
It's a four-door sedan.
Okay. And what did you end up doing with those 5.45 caliber casings?
Those casings were photographed in place, and then they were collected on scene.
Okay. And then were they turned over or placed into evidence?
Yeah, so I had transported them back to the sheriff's office station. One was located in this complex, and then they were secured in the property room before being sent off to the lab for analysis.
Okay, excellent. Just a moment, Your Honor. I don't have any other questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Thank you. Cross-examination.
None, Judge.
Thank you. Detective, you may step down. Thank you, sir. May call your next witness.
Detective Wiggins.
All right,
Another witness that needs,
gotcha. So I need, private phone. All right. They can come in now.
Your Honor, are we ready?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm testimony about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay, hold before you do that. Come out, exclude. You done?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. And Trooper, we have your name, your current employment. How are you employed? Without getting into some of the more peculiarities of your employment, were you involved in the arrest of Daniel Franklin on May 30th of this year?
Yes.
Okay. And is that somebody who you see in the courtroom today? And if you don't mind pointing to him and telling us what he's wearing. And Your Honor, if the record will reflect that the witness has identified the defendant.
Without objection, record so reflect.
Thank you. And Trooper, were you working with other law enforcement when Mr. Franklin was apprehended? Okay. And how many other officers or law enforcement were you working with?
At least 8.
Okay. Ultimately, where was Daniel Franklin? Where did that traffic stop first happen? Is that in Pittsfield or maybe Ann Arbor? Okay. Within Washtenaw County? Okay. And was there any other subjects of interest that you were pursuing? Okay. And I'm sorry, do you know how to spell DeMario? D-A or D-E? D-E-M-A-R-I-O? Seems right. Anybody else? Well, just at the time, was it just? Okay. And exactly, tell me how this occurred.
We were looking for a warrant, and we were able to locate him in a 2024 Chevy Silverado that was registered at one of his business. Surveyed him for a while, ended up conducting a traffic stop, and at that time, we discovered that there was multiple individuals in the car.
Okay. And so when you pulled up to the 2024 Chevy Silverado, what happened with the people that were inside of the car? I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I get this right. You're talking about the rear passenger, not the driver's side? Okay. Of the vehicle. And who was that individual that ran? Okay. And that's the person that you identified earlier. Okay. And at some point in time, I take it, what happened with the other occupants of the vehicle?
The other occupants stayed with the vehicle and followed verbal commands from Officer Johnson.
And were you present when a search of that vehicle was conducted? And what of anything of evidentiary value was taken from that vehicle?
2 firearms were located. One was on the center area of the rear seat, and then one was located under the.
Okay. And do you recall what types of firearms they were?
I believe the one on the seat in the rear, it wasn't very. The firearm located under the rear passenger seat was a Glock 45 caliber. It did have a Glock switch on it, which is.
I'm sorry, if you don't mind explaining to the court what a Glock switch is?
Just from my knowledge, something.
And how does that appear? Like, how are you able to identify that it's a Glock switch?
Stick out the back of the slide of the Glock, or there's a slides in, kind of like an insert.
Okay. you might not have taken those firearms into custody or into evidence, but you saw them obtained from the vehicle.
Overruled.
Okay. Your Honor, thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Cross-examination.
You indicated that you were, you had a warrant for someone else, correct? And then you indicated that, Mr. Daniel Franklin ran. Did you know him at all? Did you know him before this? Okay, but you weren't looking for him. Okay. Who else you said was in the car? Yeah. And what? Okay. You didn't apprehend my client, correct?
No.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any redirect?
Just one question, Your Honor, if I may. Were you aware that the defendant had a warrant out for his arrest as well?
Yes.
You may step down. Thank you, Jeremy. Well, hold it. Hold on one moment. Can we go private? Go ahead. Thank you, sir. Yes, you are. May call your next witness.
Your Honor, thank you. I'm going to call Detective Luke.
Sir, please come forward, be sworn.
Casey Luke, CASEY,
Thank you.
Wire.
And Detective Luke, we have your name, your current employment, and how long have you been a detective? And how long have you been with the Sheriff's Department?
about 6 years.
All right. Were you assigned or given officer in charge responsibilities to a shooting that occurred on March 26, 2024 at 960 West Michigan?
Yes.
All right. And are you familiar with the decision in this matter?
Yes.
And who is that? Okay. And you're aware that that a post-mortem examination was performed on Mr. Holly,
Yes.
and that was done shortly thereafter on March 27th, I believe.
Correct.
Okay. And did you are you aware who performed that examination? Tash Jean?
Yeah.
And for the record, Your Honor, that's TASHJIAN.
Thank you.
And as the officer in charge, are you also aware, or did you get a copy of that report?
Yes.
Okay. And that report was completed in May of 2024.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Thank you, Your Honor. For the record, unless there's any issues, I'm going to look to submit the postmortem examination report for the court.
Yeah, I will stipulate to it. It's not, that's not an issue in this case.
Exhibit 1, exhibit number.
Exhibit 1, Your Honor.
All right.
If I may approach?
Yes.
You want?
Like yes. All right, thank you.
In prior to court, you've had an opportunity to review and examine that report. Okay. And do you recall what the cause of death and manner of death was of Mr. Jones Holly? Do you recall how many gunshot wounds there were? Okay. You are also familiar with the defendant in this matter?
Correct.
Is that somebody who you see in the courtroom today? Just need you to point to him and tell us what he's wearing. Thank you. Your Honor, again, for the record, that the witness has identified the defendant.
Was that objection record so we?
And you're aware that, are you also aware what happened to Mr. Franklin at the end of May?
Yes.
Okay. And as the officer in charge in this matter, are you aware that some evidence was collected?
Yes.
Okay. And what, if anything, did you do, or are you aware of what happened? Or what evidence was collected from his arrest? And again, we heard some testimony already, but what is it? What's unique about that Glock switch?
It's a small device that you attach to the back of the slide on the Glock that basically turns or gives the option to turn the gun from semi-automatic to fully.
All right. And what happened with that Michigan State, or what happened? I'm sorry. What happened with that Glock 21? Okay. And as the officer in charge, did you also get a report regarding that?
Yes.
Okay. And was there a comparison report generated between the 5 bullets that Deputy Soering testified to, as well as that?
Yeah, so all 5 .45 caliber fire cartridge casings from the scene of the homicide were collected.
Okay. All right. And here's the report. Your Honor, if I can approach with People's Exhibit number 2.
You may.
Detective Luke, you've had an opportunity to review that exhibit number 2 before court today. And are you familiar with what that is? Okay. And I'm sorry, you were testifying to it. But what was the conclusion regarding the comparison for the Glock that was recovered to those 5 casings that were found inside of that Chrysler 300. Okay, all right. And that's a fair and accurate copy of the report that you received from MSP, I think authored by, I'm sorry, if you could read is it Ellen Strassine? Thank you. Thank you. Your Honor, unless there's any objection or voir dire to the issue, I'm going to move to admit People's Exhibit number 2.
Any objection or voir dire? Exhibit 2 is admitted.
I don't have any other questions for this witness at this point.
Cross-examination.
Good morning. Officer Luke, you indicated that you knew my client, correct? And that's prior to this. And you knew Mr. Alonzo Holly, correct? You knew him from being a gang member?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the
Overruled. Go ahead.
Yeah. You knew as officer in charge of this case, did you ever look into his background? So he was arrested for guns before, correct? I didn't hear if it was a yes or a no.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Any redirect?
Your Honor, I'm sorry, Detective Luke, just to be clear, you're aware of everything that was collected in terms of evidence for this case?
Yes.
Were there any other firearms located in or around that Chrysler 300?
No.
Okay, I don't have any other questions.
All right. Nothing else? You may sit down. Thank you, sir. Okay, call your next witness.
I think at this point in time, we don't have any other
All right.
people address.
Any witnesses for the defense? Argument. Motion and argument.
At this point in time, we're going to motion for the court to find over the defendant on charges contained within the information. The defendant is currently charged with 1 count of open murder and 1 count of seizure of firearm. Obviously, the felony firearm being attached to that open murder charge. Straightforward. Mr. McDaniel testified about being inside of the car, testified to the positioning of each of the 5 occupants of that car himself, that there was an argument between Mr. Holly, who was seated in the driver's seat, as well as the defendant, Mr. Franklin, over occupied with other matters. He suddenly heard a gunshot go off from the right of him. At that point in time, he promptly scattered from the vehicle along with the other occupants, not being sure what had happened to Mr. Jones-Holly, not being sure where the other vehicles had gone to. He came and testified to the defendant, identified the defendant as being to the right of him, the location from which those gunshots were heard. That being said, Your Honor, after that, we heard testimony from Deputy Sims. Deputy Sims testified to Mr. Jones-Holly being found inside of the vehicle. He was aware that there were some casings also being recovered from inside of that vehicle or being found inside of that vehicle, noting that to him, based on his experience, his training, that the bullets seemed to travel from inside of the vehicle to the outside of the vehicle. We heard similar testimony in regards to from Detective Swery regarding travel of the bullets. He noted that he recovered 5 total bullets from inside of the vehicle. Bullets were collected, recovered, sent for comparison. We heard from Trooper Wiggins, who testified to the arrest of the defendant and finding a Glock 21, a Glock 45 caliber gun from where the defendant was fled from the car, apprehended, and being recovered. Then the gun and the 5 bullets showed that gun is identified as having fired each of those 5 cartridges that were recovered from inside of the car. And finally, we have the ME report that suggests that Mr. Jones-Holly died as a result of those gunshots inside of the car. It's a circumstantial case, but a very strong circumstantial case that the defendant is the one who fired the gun from the rear seat, shooting Mr. Jones-Holly a number of times, causing the death. The gun was obviously inside of a motor vehicle. That would be the basis of the carrying.
All right. Response.
Your Honor, Detective Luke indicated that he knew Alonzo Holly and that he had been arrested for guns before. So Mr. McDaniel testified that the one person who talked about shooting somebody over the breeze was Alonzo Holly. He said, "I'm going to shoot you if you don't give me my braids." It was a heated situation. He indicated he didn't see what was happening in the front, but he heard the shot and he scattered. So there were other occupants in that car who may or may not have removed a gun. Mr. Holly will make an empty threat to shoot somebody without having a gun in a heated argument, Judge. I don't think so. So I think that this is a case of self-defense.
Case of self-defense.
Self-defense. If you want to look at the whole thing, that's what you would have at this point. Somebody threatened, "I'll shoot you if you don't do this," and somebody shoots somebody. He's shot, okay? And there are other people in the car. That's it. So I don't know how they can have him for.
Yeah, well, counsel, I don't really have, I can't and would not address self-defense at this point, but at what point are you indicating that the defendant was faced with a situation where he needed to use deadly force?
All right, so we don't have, there's indirect evidence based on what was testified to by Mr. McDaniel. However, the only individual who talked about shooting somebody, if somebody comes in here, if I say I'll shoot somebody in this courtroom, I'm gonna be shot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a guarantee. So is his right less than anybody else's? If somebody says, "I'm gonna shoot you."
If someone had the present ability to carry out that deadly force, but there's nothing on this record that gets me near that.
So based on the testimony of,
They can't use deadly force in response to just words, counsel, is I guess a better
Well,
way of putting it.
I mean, the point is what I've just said. I'm not gonna argue about it any further than to say that that's a normal response. If you believe that you're gonna be shot, you defend yourself. So that's where I am at this point. Thank you.
Okay, and that may mean something for circuit court. Is there any additional argument? All right. Based upon the testimony in this case, what is clear to this court is that the defendant, one commonality with the defendant, the two circumstances that were testified to, where a weapon was fired and then a weapon ultimately recovered, is both the defendant's presence in the Silverado and the Chrysler 300. So it's very clear that the defendant and the presence of that gun with the defendant really becomes, I would say that becomes the connection between this defendant, the firing of that weapon, and the ultimate firing into or causing the homicide of the decedent in this case. Based upon that evidence, court would find that the people have sustained their burden and would bind the defendant over on the charge of open murder homicide. Also on, because as the people have stated, the weapon would have been carried in a motor vehicle, would also bind him over on count 2, the carrying a concealed weapon, and the use of the firearm in the predicate offense of the homicide would also bind the defendant over on count 3. Therefore, the defendant is bound over on all 3 counts substantially. As to the arraignment on those charges, counsel.
Your Honor, we waive a reading of the communication and stand mute.
Defendant having waived formal reading, standing mute, court will enter a not guilty plea as to all 3 charges. Pre-trial in this matter will be set for
January 8th at 1:30 before Judge Conlon.
January 8th, 2025, 1:30 before Judge Conlon.
I didn't hear the name of the judge.
Conlon. Conlon, yes,
Thank you.
very popular name here in Washington County. Conlin.
Okay, thank you.
All right. We will do that. Do we have did we get another day?
There's November 8th.
Well, that 18th, I can do November 18th at 9 a.m. on the other case.
One split second, Judge.
That date is
Sorry.
fine for the people. Sorry.
I'm available that day.
All right. So preliminary examination in that matter, that being 24 FB 1156. Preliminary examination will be adjourned. Did I say November 18th? November 18th, 2024, 9 a.m. And that's before me on that day. Bond will continue in each of these matters as denied. Thank you. And thank you.
Do you have a copy of the information?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it. 14A stands adjourned.